Hi, so today I'm talking to the very lovely Emma Kemsley, who is going to be talking to me today about her journey with endometriosis and fertility. So it's great to have you, Emma. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Having me. It's nice to catch up.
It is always lovely to catch up with you. And I know we've spoken before quite a few times about endometriosis and kind of your experience with it and the things that you've gone through. And I know it'd be really helpful for other people to know kind of that these things are normal, but anything that you found has helped you along the way as well, and any support that's available. So are you okay just to talk to start with sort of your kind of experience, how you knew you'd got it, your experiences on a month by month basis of it?
God, where do we start? It's endometriosis is extremely complex in terms of getting a diagnosis. So I probably went for years and years at thinking that this is a normal period. This is what everyone experiences. So I think the first real bad bout of pain I can remember was when I was 19, and I had been to a boxing class, so it was quite an intense core exercise, and I came home, I was due on a period, and the pain was horrific. I remember just biting into my pillow and thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
You know, I could take this paracetamol or Nurofen, but I just accepted that and then carried on. And then it started to become more and more frequent. But at, my late teens, early 20s, I was on the pill. So I had to go to the doctors, to the GP, and they say, oh, it's period pain. Here you go, have a stronger painkiller. I think at that time it was only, they was giving me anti-inflammatories, methylphenic acid is one of their go-tos. So really baseline painkillers. It didn't really do anything, but I thought, oh, okay, that's what happens. This is what everyone else does.
Did it seem to ease when you were on the pill then, or was it still kind of the same and just kind of building?
Every period sort of seemed great between perhaps, and every period I had was just awful. So I just took it upon myself to continuously take the pill. And I just took it, and I had to think, oh God, after 6 months, should I be doing this? So I did check with the doctor, and they was like, yeah, it's fine. You can, if it helps, continuously take it. So I did from, late teens till I was about 26, 27. I was consistent on the pill, but I still had pain. But I just thought that was normal.
Yeah.
Ovarian pain, like sharp pains. But at the time, I was pretty unfamiliar with the reproductive system. I didn't associate that with ovary pain. And I don't think you do until you start exploring and you have issues in that area. I think you're actually quite naive about how your reproductive system works.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think it's for so long you talk about the fact that you get pregnant easily. You kind of just focus on the fact you don't want to get pregnant and don't think about what's going on down there, do you? And I guess there's so much around kind of bad period pain that I guess, because I'd be the same, I just assumed that I got it bad, that I just had bad period pain.
Yeah, and I still kept getting pain, and it was getting more and more frequent, and I was thinking, why am I in pain? I'm on the pill, like why have I still got cramps? To the point where I'd be laying under my desk at work, just crunched over. And I didn't have very understanding bosses at the time. I'd come in late to work in the morning. Why are you late again? I'm like, because I'm in so much pain in the morning, I can't move. Oh, my wife gets on with it. Everyone else does it, but I don't. I'm sure that you'd hope that things come a long way now, because it is recognised in the workplace as legally a disability, I believe, which it wasn't then.
Yeah.
Leaps and bounds. But yeah, I remember just laying under my desk, vomiting into a bin because I'd be so much pain, having days off. And I remember saying to friends, oh, don't you hate it when you get them period pains that wake you up in the night and you're like, oh, and you have to pace around the room? And they were like, no. I was like, period pain doesn't wake me up. And that was the first time I'd actually asked someone.
Yeah.
At 27, and I started to think, I don't think this is actually okay.
Yeah. And you would think that in all the years of going to the doctor and talking about the pain, that it would have come up. But I guess this is why it's so important now to be raising awareness of it. And like you say, in workplaces, it has become more known. But I still think any managers who haven't had somebody experience it probably are still very unaware of it. So I think most people will still be struggling with that in the workplace. I still don't think there'll be enough support there for it.
I've actually, I work with my husband. He has a business. Well, we have a business called The Informal, and a part of my role in that company is to offer wellbeing consultancy based around endometriosis and fertility in the workplace. And so we take it from a real perspective, and I will go in and teach managers how to, deal with the situation. Why one day I could be, in the gym for 2 hours working out and, having a lovely time and be life and soul and having, really productive. And the next day I could be crippled, because it can change like that.
I think
there is no reason. If you get a flare, you get a flare. You can't control it. And I think that's what people find hard. Hold on, you was on holiday 2 days ago on the beach having fun with your rosé, and now you're in hospital. But it doesn't marry up, and unless you experience that and you hear it firsthand, it's quite hard to get your head around.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why so many other people around those who have endometriosis struggle to support them. So it's great you're doing that in workplaces to help people with that. And so you said you were about 27 when you spoke to your friend about it. Did you go and speak to somebody else about another doctor then about it then?
I was back and forwards to the GP every month, begging them for another painkiller, begging them. And then we actually moved to a different area, and I changed GP practices. And then we moved again, and then to a different GP practice. So I think I went through 3 GP practices before I found someone that said, that's not okay. It was a female GP. That's not okay. I'm referring you to a gynecologist. And she went through the list of my local hospital. And she was so amazing. She was like, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And pulled out her favorite and best consultant. And he saw me, and he said, okay, we're going to put you on we're going to do an MRI. Between getting that MRI and seeing him, I was hospitalized with an erupted ovarian cyst. I had no idea I had it. It was 15 centimeters in diameter. So I've been carrying around with me, just like this big. I've been carrying around with me. And I do think I was a bit bloated, that I hadn't put on that much weight, but you're carrying around a big.
I guess you were so used to all the pain with the endometriosis, you probably were less aware of it. Maybe if you hadn't had that, you might have been more aware of the pain because of that. But I guess it all kind of lumped into just continuous pain at certain times of the month, didn't it?
It did. And I'd had ultrasounds in the meantime, but pelvic ultrasounds don't show endometriosis. They're not a very, I still don't understand why the medical professionals refer for an ultrasound, because it doesn't show endometriosis. It does now, but that's because my endometriosis has destroyed most of my organs. It's impossible to miss. But at that, for so many, it doesn't show on an ultrasound, and it's almost time wasting. And it's disheartening when you go for something and they're like, oh no, you're fine, but you're actually not. And it is hard to diagnose endometriosis. It shows as many other possible illnesses, the symptoms, and a laparoscopy is the only way to officially diagnose. So the NHS don't particularly like just performing them willy-nilly. It is reserved for more serious cases. So basically I had the cyst, I was hospitalized, which then kind of fast-tracked me onto getting the surgery. I had an MRI, it showed endometriosis, but when he actually performed the surgery, he removed the large cysts from my right ovary, a few from my left ovary. He untangled, my left ovary was attached to my uterus and the side wall. So that was freed up. And it was removed, blah, blah, blah. And he confirmed I had stage 4 widespread endometriosis. And I remember him saying to me, you need to have a baby now. You don't have the luxury of leaving it till you're 30. And I think you're going to need IVF. Don't wait longer than 6 months.
Yeah.
But at the time, we had our wedding booked later in the year. I don't want a baby at 27. And I was like, oh, what's he know? I'll leave it. And but what he, I should have listened. But what I think he should have advised is freeze your eggs.
Yeah.
That would have been a more sensible option. But that wasn't really spoken about then. So we were talking 2014, which is years ago. We have come really a long way in terms of awareness and the options available. And that wasn't an option then. I didn't know anything about egg freezing or IVF.
No. And is there anything they can do? So did they suggest anything to kind of help it? Is there anything that can be done for endometriosis? Any treatment? Can it be parts be taken, like the cells be taken off, or any of the scarring, things like that?
I think he used laser, and he actually cut away some of the adhesions. And it did give me, and just taking out a huge ovarian cyst, it really did give me some relief.
Yeah.
I would say it gave me a relief for quite a while, and then I just went back on the pill.
Yeah,
While I was on the pill consistently again, things were fine. I lived probably 2 years. 2 years. Yeah, I probably lived a good 2-3 years consistently on the pill again. I still had pain, don't get me wrong, but it was fine.
Yes, manageable.
But then I hit 30 and I really noticed a shift in the condition, the way I was managing it, whether it got worse. It did get worse. It got worse. And I think you get to a certain age and your body doesn't quite work with the pill anymore. And I think that's a natural thing to happen because of your hormones change. And it just wasn't working like it used to.
Yeah.
And then I think 2018, I was hospitalized again. I came off the pill in 2016, because we decided, okay, let's have a baby.
Yeah.
We spent 8 months living in Ibiza, had a lovely time, came home, said, okay, let's have a baby now. We've had the wedding, we've had a nice time. Let's move on to the next step, as you do.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of confusion. There was a lot of mistakes made with our initial IVF NHS funding. The paperwork wasn't filed in time with the deadline. The hospital lost it. And then in the meantime, I was in hospital again with another ovarian cyst that had erupted. And they had no record of my IVF treatment. So when I retested to meet the markers for the NHS funding, because I'd had this ovarian cyst and another surgery, I no longer met the criteria for the funding, so they took it away.
I didn't realise there was funding around that, about kind of surgery and things like that, but it's
the IVF. So they took my funding away for the IVF because after the surgery, I no longer met the AMH level.
Ah, right, okay.
Even though they had told me to have the surgery.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's really difficult. It was just a vicious circle. And I actually paid for that surgery private because the I couldn't get a surgery date for at least 6 to 8 months. Yeah. And I just couldn't live a life on painkillers every day. So I paid for it privately, and I got it within 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've had to pay a few private surgeries because, when you're in so much pain, you have to weigh up your options. You just feel 6 months feels like a lifetime.
Yeah, and if it gets progressively worse at certain times each month as well, just 6 months it's a long time of living with that, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I mean, so I had that surgery, moved another ovarian cyst. Things eased for a while. We got our NHS funding. We got 3 lovely embryos. We had 2 failed cycles. Then we decided to go to Barcelona for IVF. because we'd heard good things, and we wasn't particularly happy with the clinic we was at. And in Barcelona, they picked up that my fallopian tubes needed removing because they were leaking fluid into my uterus and killing my embryos.
Oh.
So in theory, I'd wasted 2 lovely embryos.
Yeah.
And that again is from endometriosis.
There's that link to it. So that can be.
Yeah, it completely destroyed my fallopian tubes. Yeah, and they were swollen with a huge amount of fluid that was leaking into my uterus. It was causing infections, and I was in constant pain. I actually had the surgery in Barcelona, again privately, just because it could be done within 2 weeks. And we was there with the IVF clinic, and it made sense that they could communicate and know exactly what needed to be done.
Yeah.
Tube removal, a standard tube removal usually takes 45 minutes. I was in surgery for 6 hours because he couldn't get to my tubes.
The endometriosis around.
And bless him, he didn't have, he had standard English, better than my Spanish. But the only way he could describe it is he said he was like Indiana Jones hacking through the.
Oh, lovely. That's always how you want it to be described, isn't it? But
yeah, and he said it was one of the hardest surgeries he'd ever done.
Yeah. And it's amazing it got so far and things like that hadn't been picked up, and you can see why you were in so much pain with it.
Yeah. And when I went back to my team in London, they highly praised his surgical skills. They could see it had been a really difficult surgery, and they said whoever did this, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And it was worth him doing the surgery and taking that risk and doing it in Barcelona. So we done more IVF. We had an early chemical pregnancy. We froze some embryos. So we continued. Pain eased after that surgery for, I would say, 6 months, and then it came back. And during this time, it started to affect my bowel. So we're around about 2018 now, and that's when my bowels, it started to flare. I could feel really, really bloated.
Yeah.
And then I started to pass blood, which is so alarming.
Yeah.
Because you find immediately things, I've got bowel cancer.
Yeah, that would be the first thing.
Where else would your mind go? That's that's all you hear about, isn't it? That's the main symptom. So I panicked. Luckily, my GP was really good, and she instantly referred me, and I got a referral to my local hospital in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's good.
And they said it was IBS, and to monitor my diet and eat little and often.
Did they do checks with that? Because personally, I've had problems, and the doctor was very much like IBS is kind of what you class it as once you've ruled out everything else, really. So it's kind of like you don't really get a diagnosis until you've ruled other things out. So did they check for other things at that point, or that it could be endometriosis?
Camera. I had a camera, but it was clear. But the reason being, they've just looked for a basic diagnosis. If it had been an endometriosis specialist doing the camera, they would have known what to look for. Yeah. But as a general doctor in that area, he wasn't looking for endometriosis. Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, that's why it wasn't picked up. So there was nothing I could do about it. So I took things into my own hands. I researched the best bowel endometriosis surgeon I could find, the best clinic. I self-referred from my GP because I wasn't happy with the level of care at my current hospital. So I referred to UCLH in London, who have an incredible endometriosis team. They are really leading the way. They're making new progression all the time. The doctors are really caring. Although I think my surgeon's actually left now, so I don't know who I'm going to get next. But they really look after me, and I've got to the position now where I need to be monitored closely every 6-8 months, just to keep an eye on my organs, and they are there for that, and they do check me.
That's good.
So I'm between hospitals, so I go there for my checks, but when I'm in a case of emergency, I go to my closest hospital. So I'm split between two teams, which is actually quite difficult sometimes. But yeah, so they look after me, and they explained about bowel endometriosis. They did, I think I had about a 2.5-hour pelvic scan of in 4D. So we had to, they was like, you can take a break if you want to, and they monitored all my organs, and endometriosis has advanced. It's inside my bladder, it's on my bladder. So my bladder, uterus, bowel, colon, rectum, all kind of mangled together. I have endometriosis inside my bladder, so I can no longer take my bladder to full capacity. I pee every 15 minutes. Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to the point now, if I'm actually out in a restaurant and you're having a few drinks with friends and whatnot, unless I'm near a toilet, I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because if I need to go, I need to go. Yeah. And I've got to the point, if I'm on public transport, I want to sit near the toilet on the train.
Yeah.
Because it's just uncomfortable and painful. If I've got a full bladder, it's painful.
Yeah.
And the bowel situation's continued. It's just become the norm that for probably 7 days of the month, I will poo blood. So it's too much information, but that's all I will pass. I will just pass blood. And I will limit what I eat to not set anything off too much, to limit it the best I can. It's awful because it's almost a pressure. So I'll stand up and I'll instantly need to go. Sometimes I just sit on the toilet with a laptop on really bad days because it's just easier for me to sit on the toilet for hours.
God, it's impacted so much of your life, hasn't it? I didn't even realize kind of how impactful it is and how many different areas it can affect. And that whole thing has made you have to adapt your life, hasn't it? I hadn't realized it would get so bad.
I am an extreme case. This doesn't happen to everyone. And some people have surgery and see huge, improvements. Unfortunately, it's not the case for everyone, myself included. And I think most people with endometriosis will have to have a couple of surgeries. It's almost something, it's like maintenance.
Yeah.
You have to keep it, but it can make it worse. And in my example, it has made it worse. And I am an extreme case, and they like to tell me that, and they like to get all the trainees to have a look at the extreme case. And when I've done IVF and I've had the nurses come in, oh, I've never seen endometriosis this bad. Can I take a picture? You're like, yeah, go for it. I'm literally like the guinea pig that everyone likes to look at and prod.
You hope that it kind of helps them understand other people to help other people that you kind of to get something out of that.
Yeah. So yes, that's become my life, and to this point, I've learned to accept and adapt. That's my motto for life. With bad, severe endometriosis, accept it and adapt, because there's no point dwelling on it, because you're going to ruin your own life.
Yeah.
It's happened to you. You cannot change it. There is no cure for it. The best thing you can do is monitor it, keep it in check the best that you can, accept you're going to have bad days, accept that sometimes you're going to be in bed for 5 days or on the toilet on and off, and plan your life around it. So I use a period app, and I'm religious with it so that I know, fortunately for me, my periods are very regular, and so I can plan my life around it.
Yeah.
So I know, for example, that this week, I know that I'm probably going to have a period the weekend. I'm not going to exercise this week, because I know by exercising, I could potentially make the pain worse. And I can just feel that my uterus is starting to feel really heavy, especially today. And my bowels starting to go a little bit. So yes, I'm like, okay, I won't exercise this week, and I'm going to be really careful with what I eat. So I'm not going to eat a lot. I won't eat meat this week, or gluten, or I wouldn't drink alcohol. And that will help me through the weekend, maybe early next week. So that's where I'm at. I accept that and I plan around it. So I wouldn't deliberately make any plans this weekend. And that's just part of my life. And, you know, if you're open with friends and you're honest with friends and family, they understand. Like sometimes I'll make a plan and be like, okay, but you need to know that I might cancel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And friends and, you know, they'll understand that. And if someone doesn't understand that, then you don't want that person in your life.
They're not a good friend then, are they? So it sounds like a lot of it, the way you cope is around managing that and understanding, knowing what works for you. Is there anything that you found that helps with the pain when you are getting the pain? Anything that does ease it, or anything you can do that helps?
Hot water bottle. I'm a connoisseur of hot water bottles. I have all kinds of I have a nice long hot water bottle, which is great for back pain because when it pours, it can sometimes pour on the nerves in my back.
Yeah.
Which is great for back pain. I have a little mini hot water bottle, which fits perfectly inside my jeans or my tracky bottoms, and I just walk around with it. And no one's none the wiser. Or like, and if I'm actually laying in bed, I'll put a nice big hot water bottle on my belly. Yeah, heat pads, hot water bottles are my go-to. Ginger tea for inflammation, I find quite helpful. But it's mainly avoiding things that are going to trigger pain. So caffeine, alcohol, red meat for me in particular. Yeah. I know there's things in my diet, so no matter what time of the month, that I can't eat aubergine. I can't eat it. It will instantly trigger my endometriosis, and I will be creased over in pain and on the toilet, which is so bizarre.
It's hard, isn't it? I guess it's understanding what triggers you individually, isn't it? Maybe something like keeping a food diary.
Food diary, 100%, and it is trial and error, and it will take time. But once you know the triggers, you'll be much better equipped.
Yeah.
And I've tried being, I know quite often when I write things, I get people commenting saying, be vegan, you know, or go gluten-free. I've tried all those things. It doesn't, I'm still in pain and just hungry. So I'm going to be in pain. I might as well just eat what I want to eat. My life's miserable enough.
Yeah. Yeah, so rather than having to make a choice because of that, you know, you rather make a choice. If you want to be that, make a choice out of wanting to do it rather than needing to. But yeah, I mean, having the app's a great idea because I mean, I think a lot of people who are trying to get pregnant anyway have those apps, don't they? But then having that as a way of monitoring, once you know what triggers it, that's then your kind of your calendar, isn't it, of being able to work it round. So
having that app, planning around, accepting, adapting, getting a good endometriosis team. You can refer yourself. If you're not happy with your team, do your own research, read every medical case study on the internet, find the doctors, think about what your issue is. Is it severe pain? Is it a bowel issue? Is it a bladder issue that the endometriosis is causing? And then find the specialist in that niche.
Yeah.
And then refer. The hospital might be 2 hours away, but it'd be worth it.
Yeah.
You know, London's not around the corner for me. It's expensive every time I go into London, but I would rather have that team looking after me because they understand.
And what about if somebody hasn't got the diagnosis of endometriosis and maybe struggling with the pain, hadn't really realised what it was or think it might be? Is there anything they can do to almost advocate for themselves? Is it worth them saying to the GP, I think it's this, and can you check for this? Is there something that would help?
One thing I wish I had done is keep a symptom diary. Write down all your symptoms, the dates, look at if they're working, if it's around your period, when it is, or if it's something you've eaten, and write down those symptoms, date them. You can actually get apps for that now. There are apps that work with endometriosis, so you can track your symptoms, and pull the data off and show your GP, or you know, just write it down on fashion pen and paper.
Yeah.
It makes me sound really old. On your notes on your phone.
Will that help them get a diagnosis quicker, do you think?
I think it can help them realise just exactly what you're going through, because quite often you'll go in to a GP when you're in pain, so you're not clearly thinking. And when you're in pain, it's quite easy to just take the prescription for the painkillers and not push forward and raise your concerns. But I think seeing a GP, getting a good relationship with your GP, I always find kindness goes a long way. Build a relationship with them. And if you feel they're being dismissive, request a different GP. You've got every right to. You've got every right to request who you feel comfortable with. Yeah. I've had consultants in the past that are dismissive, and I've immediately said, no, I don't want them.
Yeah. And you would, sorry, I know you said earlier on there were certain ones who just seemed to understand, and they were better. Maybe it's just that some doctors have more awareness of endometriosis, but if you can go in with a list of all the symptoms, it might be that one of those words is a trigger thing for them to think, or even a combination of those things then makes them think, actually, that could be endometriosis rather than IBS, or rather than just standard period pain. I guess it's just that. And if you know something isn't right, advocating, really kind of going back, checking and saying, I'm still not right, this still isn't working.
Go back and but unfortunately with endometriosis, it is a lot of self-research, and you really do have to advocate for yourself. There is progression, and there is so much awareness about GPs, recognizing the signs. I've actually just interviewed a really amazing endometriosis surgeon, and he was telling me about, he launched a workshop for GPs in 2020 to help them understand and recognize the signs of endometriosis. And he's seen an increase in his referrals. One of the stories was one of the referrals, the GP had recognized that the patient had uterine pain, and that was getting pain there. And rather than thinking, oh, it's a bladder issue, he matched the other symptoms and thought, actually, this could be endometriosis, because he'd learned that from the workshop.
Yeah, that's great.
Referral. So he said, there's communication that needs to be improved between the surgeons and the GPs, and getting that knowledge across, because it helps the GPs see their patients' complaints in a new way. Yeah. And it's had great success. And if that could be rolled, that's just in his area at the moment, but if that could be rolled out throughout the nation, that could be huge progress. That could be a complete game changer. Yeah.
It'd make a huge difference, wouldn't it, for people who, when it's not obvious, and I understand with GPs it's very difficult because they have to diagnose in a very short space of time. They have to have an idea of everything. But I guess it's this thing around so many different things now, becoming more, the awareness is growing of so many different things, that you hope that is helping more and more people.
Yeah. And you've got to remember, GPs, like ourselves, are going to have interests in certain subjects. So a GP might be interested in, I don't know, like more physio side of things and bones, etc., where another GP might be interested in endometriosis. Even though they're general practitioners, you might find they might lean towards other things, other subjects more than others. So I was fortunate that I found, after free GP practice, I found someone that was really gynae orientated. But that was a happy mistake that I found her.
And maybe that's something that people could ask when they book appointments. So if you are at doctor's surgery where they have a lot of different doctors, maybe asking for somebody who specialises a bit more or has a bit more understanding of female gynecological problems, because it might be that it's just a case of you could have been put with anybody on that.
Yeah, it's worth the question. It really is worth the question. Like I say, you can pick and choose who you see, and if you're not happy, you can move. But just don't ever feel dismissed, and that your pain isn't worth talking about, because periods should not be painful. You can expect some discomfort. It's part of, that's part of having a period, unfortunately. But pain shouldn't wake you up in the night. It shouldn't make you pass out. It shouldn't make you sick.
Yeah.
It shouldn't stop you from doing activities.
Yeah.
Like, it blows my mind when I'm out with a friend, they're like, oh, I've got a period on. I'm like, how are you out?
Yeah. It's so
that they're out shopping or out on a night out. I'm like, how?
Yeah, the difference. And where can people get support then who are struggling? Where can they get information? Are there certain places that you found are really great for information and for support for people? Are there support groups and what you do as well, the work you do and the things you share? How can they find you so that they can get support from you?
I have, and if you want to follow along my journey, I always put a little few tips and things that I learn along the way. You can learn from my mistakes as such. I have a column at Best Fertility now. I have a column every month about endometriosis, and it'd be my latest, what's happening with my endometriosis that month, or perhaps my IVF or fertility journey. For instance, just before Christmas, I had a hospital admission because my endometriosis has now decided to spontaneously cause ovarian infections. That's another new trait. I've been hospitalized twice in the last year with an ovarian infection. So we're currently waiting for a surgery date to be drained. Unfortunately, long lead times. I think it's about 6 months. So you got my column, which is always insightful. The Endometriosis UK, the charity itself, is a great place for hearing other people's stories and case studies, and they're always putting new data out. So they're a great point of call. That would always be my first point of call. You're going to find so much information on that website. And then there's support groups as well on social media. There's quite a few. You'll find lots on Facebook. We simply type endometriosis. Just make sure there are some are in America, some are in the UK. So you're better off if you're in the UK to get a UK-based one. And women often share their, oh, have you had this? And you'll find people that have similar symptoms to you, and it's sometimes interesting to read the comments to see what other people have done in that situation. Sometimes this is a personal preference for me. I find social media groups a little bit whingy, heavy. Not whingy, heavy. It's easy to get caught up in the negativity.
Yeah.
So I think, be sensible with a social media group and use it appropriately, and and protect your own mental health with it. If you step away, just unfollow.
And I think the same is also worth saying about that with medical advice in these groups as well, that it's really important. The groups that I run, I say don't share medical advice because everybody's situation is different. So just be aware of things that people may be suggesting are helpful, might not be something you can take. It might make it worse. It's always worth checking with your medical professional before you take anything that's medically based or do anything medically based, that it's okay for you.
If you have a medical question, the first point of call is always your gynecology consultant or your GP. Always. Don't listen to the advice of an untrained professional. Always go to your GP or your consultant. So there are some great resources out there. On Best Fertility now, I've written articles about what to expect with your first surgery. Everything that you need to know is a 4-part series of every question you can think of, I have answered.
Brilliant.
And also I've written an article that is full of useful resources. So the podcasts to listen to, the apps to download, the books to read. So that's quite a useful resource. And some great books as well on endometriosis about how to help with diet and fertility around endometriosis. There's some great resources out there, there really is.
Yeah. That's brilliant. There's lots of information there for people to check. And those articles you've written sound great because they're very much from personal experience, but also talking about actual things you can do and things to be aware of ready for your surgery. So it's definitely worth checking you out. Best Fertility now, all the things you've got on there.
Yeah, and again, everyone's surgery is different. Everyone's going to have different recovery times. So when you're looking at these social media groups and say my articles, you've got to think that everyone's different. So you can take some knowledge out of them, but apply it to your own situation as such. Yeah.
So if there's one tip that you would give, I mean, there's so many in there that you've given about how people can cope and advocate for themselves, but it's kind of like one last takeaway. What's the most important thing you would say to someone who maybe thinks they've got endometriosis, or who has got it, in terms of kind of coping with it, really?
If you think you have it, symptom diary, get a referral. Push, push, push. Do not take no as an answer.
Yeah.
You know your body better than anyone else. And I would just say push, push, push. You know, despite being diagnosis is an average of 8 years.
Yeah.
It's been 8 years for a decade. It hasn't changed. It's still 8 years. And the only way that's going to change is through education, educating the public, educating GPs. So you have to be persistent.
Yeah.
Keep the diary, be persistent. Don't feel dismissed. Extreme period pain is not normal.
Yeah.
For those who have been diagnosed, my best bit of advice is accepting and adapting.
Yeah.
Now, I know I'm an extreme case and my life is really affected. You know, I can't have children. I've accepted that. I don't have a functioning bowel. I've accepted that. I'm going to be in pain 5 days of 7 days a month. I've accepted that. So accepting and adapting. I can even wallow in that and be miserable for the rest of my life, but then that's not going to change.
Yeah.
So I pick myself up, have days where I will take to my bed and, you know, feel sorry for myself in bed, but that is a part of endometriosis. And then you pick yourself up and you carry on. Just keep yourself fit, eat well, learn your triggers. That's really important. And take things to your own hands, do your own research, and just do the best you can to manage. It's difficult to say what to do because there is no one set rule. It is very much finding your own groove with it and your own what works for you.
Yeah.
Always have a stash of painkillers. Do not run out.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really insightful for me as well. I hadn't realized the extent that it can impact people's lives, and you know, the changes that you have to make and the pain that you were in, and the things you've had to do. So thank you so much. There's been so many really great bits of advice for people there, and I know it'd be really helpful. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
Bye.